Kraken hockey after the big, exciting week that was the Winter Classic and all the events that took place, whether it was the refurbishing of the Verlo playfield in Tacoma, whether it was, the fan village in the north lot of Lumen Field, there was practice day, the food tasting, all of that. There's only one game that the Kraken played last week, starting on January 4th against the Ottawa Senators to wrap up a little 3-game home stretch. And I would say home stretch with air quotes because obviously the middle of that home stretch was at T-Mobile Park for the Winter Classic. But regardless, the Kraken take care of business. They defeated the Ottawa Senators by a score of 4-1. Seattle scored the first 3 goals unanswered as Joey Decord continued his strong performance in net. Ottawa did get a goal in the third period. They put on the extra attacker in exchange for pulling the goalie. Vince Dunn scores the empty net goal, and Seattle pushes their winning streak to 6 games and their point streak to 10 games. Really nice to see this team finally start to roll. As I mentioned, with Joey Decord's strong play in this game, he is our player of the game. Not only that, he's in our photo of the game, taken by Rio Giancarlo. 32 saves on the night for Joey against his former team, a .970 save percentage, and 2.23 goal save above expected. He continues to be absolutely ridiculous in net for Seattle, holding things down as goaltender Philip Grubauer continues to work back from an injury, and just looks really solid. Normally, we'd have a player of the week, but considering there was only one game, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to do that. But no, I mean, we look at this game. Ottawa has a lot of talent, whether it's Claude Giroux, is it Matthew Tkachuk? No, it's Brady Tkachuk. I apologize. There's, you got to keep track of the Tkachuks around here. Brady Tkachuk, there's a lot of talent on that Ottawa roster, and Seattle easily could have lulled its stuff, but Dave Hackstall on practice the day before and morning skate the morning of kind of made it clear that this team is, ready. They have to come out every night. They were expecting a strong battle from Ottawa, considering the talent that they have on that roster. And they looked ready from the jump. Yanni Gourde scored a goal in back-to-back games. He opened the scoring in this one. So, Andre Burakovsky scored. Tomas Tatar scored as well. Andre scores his first goal of the year. So you're continuing to see that depth from this Kraken roster. I talked about it with the Winter Classic. We talked about it on Back to Base, so we recap the Winter Classic. So, you're looking at this Kraken team and, you're seeing the strong, structured defensive play, and that did help them last season. But last season, they were outscoring teams. They were running up the score. They were basically just imposing their will on the offensive side of the ice, and that's not the case with this year's team. But they're still showing that same sort of depth and that grit that made them a playoff team last season. So feeling good about it. We talked about it for weeks here on Circling Seattle Sports on Converge. There were cries from the fan base to make a big move, fire Dave Hackstall, trade a player, to really shake things up. And because of the losing streak and at the height of that 8-game losing streak, I thought about it. I will admit I was so strong against it for the longest time, but I thought, hey, things are going poorly. Maybe they do need to change something. And then they broke through against the Florida Panthers. They beat Florida. Florida's still a great team after going to the Stanley Cup Finals, second in the Atlantic Division right now, behind only the Boston Bruins. And they've been on that point streak ever since. They're on a 6-game winning streak. They would have moved up higher in the division, but the Edmonton Oilers are currently on a 7-game winning streak. If we look here, I want to look at the wild card standings, but Seattle is right on the door of a wild card spot. Yeah, they're right on the door. Edmonton and St. Louis are there, and then Nashville is 4 points ahead of Seattle. But the point is, you've dragged yourself from that lower point that you were in, and you're playing strong hockey. You're getting guys back from the injuries that they suffered. Jaden Schwartz will be traveling with the team, and over the past week since we've seen you, has been given the day-to-day designation. He's not been activated off IR on the NHL media site, but and speaking of that, Riker Evans was called up today earlier this morning, right as we were getting ready to start filming. Riker Evans was recalled from the AHL Coachella Valley Firebirds. There was kind of thought of why was he being sent back down ahead of the Winter Classic. But Um, to be fair, Coachella Valley did have a few games quickly around the time that the Winter Classic was happening, so it was good for them, for the Firebirds and for Riker Evans to get that game action, while Seattle's kind of have this, kind of quiet point. So Riker Evans actually did play in the 2 games that Coachella Valley played over this past weekend, beating the Abbotsford Canucks in back-to-back games. So not bad for him to continue to get game action because he had been a healthy scratch in the last game that the Kraken had played against the Philadelphia Flyers ahead of the Winter Classic. So good to get him game action and keep him in a rhythm. But yeah, no, I feel good about it where the Kraken sit, whether it's how strong they've played structured defensively, getting the impact scoring from different players. And they're doing this win streak right now. They're on this point streak without guys like Jared McCann scoring at a hot clip. Matty Benier is scoring at ridiculous points. You know what I mean? So feeling good about that and where they're headed, especially with Riker Evans coming back. It sounds like Jaden Schwartz will be able to be active at some point during this road trip. Philip Grubauer has been ramping up his work in practices, not been with the team yet in team practice sessions, but has seemed to be ramping things up. So feeling good about that. Also feeling good about the fact that we found out who the Kraken will see represented in the All-Star game this past week. Oliver Bjorkstrand, forward Oliver Bjorkstrand, will be representing the Kraken in this year's 2024 All-Star game in Toronto. It is the first time that Bjorkstrand has been named to the All-Star game. He is the second leading scorer on the Kraken, right behind Vince Dunn, top scoring forward for the Kraken as well. So really great to see Bjorky get nominated for this, and be given this sort of honor just because he's been a really underrated player for a good amount of the course of his career. He did recently play in his 500th career game that came against the Flyers, actually. Just a really strong player in a lot of different aspects. He does become the second Danish player ever to represent his team at the All-Star game. And it's funny when I say that because the other player who did so, and we'll get that here for you in a second, actually is a scout now with the Kraken. So again, just a really strong honor for him to be picked. I kind of thought it was going to be Vince Dunn, just considering the point production. But as you can see on the bottom of your screen, fan voting is currently active. It is open for now, and it opened on the 4th until January 11th. So you've got a couple more days. If you follow the instructions on the reader on the bottom of your screen, tweeting Vince Dunn, hashtag NHL All-Star Vote, and Joey Decord, hashtag NHL All-Star Vote, you will help the cause for both of those guys. Joey's played really excellent, is a big reason behind this team's current push. In addition to that fact, we look at Vince Dunn being the top point producer for the Kraken, continues to be an offensive producer for this team. Defensively, he's had better games throughout the course of the year, but still a strong producer for the Kraken. And, it would be good to see him get honored as well. So, yeah, we'll get a look at this here. Yeah, Bjorkstrand becomes the second ever Danish player named to the All-Star game. Yes, so very nice for Bjorky to get that honor. I will continue to run that banner on the bottom of the screen so you can know how to vote for other Kraken players to send them to this year's All-Star game in Toronto. So we look at that. The Kraken sit at a 16-win, 14-loss, 9 overtime loss record. They are 5th in the Pacific Division, tied with the Edmonton Oilers at 41 points in the standings. But because Edmonton holds the tiebreaker of the head-to-head wins, Edmonton has the higher spot in the division. So, as I mentioned, they're tied with 2 other teams for that last wildcard spot. So continue to make progress and you'll feel good. That can all start tomorrow, January 9th at the Buffalo Sabres. That's a 4 p.m. puck drop. All 3 of the games that the Kraken play this week are on Root Sports, and they're all 4 o'clock puck drops, which is nice to have consistency. They do practice today. I don't know if we'll hear a bunch of news out of that practice, but there is that game on the 9th, Tuesday the 9th. Then 2 days later, They will head to the nation's capital to play the Washington Capitals on January 11th. As I mentioned, a 4 p.m. start time on that one. And then 2 days later, they'll head up to Columbus, a Columbus team that surprised some folks with how well they've been doing this season. January 13th at the Columbus Blue Jackets is also a 4 p.m. Pacific time puck drop. These teams don't have the best records per se, these first three of this 6-game road trip that the Kraken will be going on over the course of the next 2 weeks. But, you don't want to fall behind. There's a lot of talent on Buffalo, on Washington, and on Columbus as well. So